Live from New York City, it's the Dream Shakerz podcast. I'm your host, Stefan Odom, alongside my co-host,
George Nunez.
and we're back with episode 37. Today, we have Al-Ameen Kabba, the founder slash CEO of Payvmnt, an end-to-end online marketplace that currently provides same-day delivery services to small business owners in New York City. Prior to Payvmnt, Al-Ameen worked at Amazon as a regional manager and Ojai as a city operations manager. He is also a CUNY/SUNY graduate, having obtained his associates from BMCC in business administration and his bachelor's from Stony Brook University in business management, international business, and entrepreneurship. So welcome to the pod, Al-Ameen.
Thank you, man. Thank you, man. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Definitely great to be here. Long overdue. Thank you guys for taking the time to be patient with me so I can finally get on this after giving you guys kind of a runaround. I apologize.
Yeah, man. You've been ducking and dodging, man. You fouled, my guy. You fouled. But how you feeling today? What's going on?
Yo, man, I'm feeling good, man. It's just been crazy. The company just took a major pivot, in the last couple of weeks. Which I'm pretty sure we'll talk about more.
Yes, sir.
Right now I'm in Dallas, about to meet with one of the attorneys from the law firm we work with, just to go over some strategies and stuff like that. So I'm out in Texas right now.
Dope. And before we get into the whole entrepreneurial phase, you do have some humble beginnings. So how was it growing up in Queens? Right, with African/Caribbean parents, or even a background of such. How was that?
Man, like I'm the youngest of, like, my mother and father had 6 kids, so I'm the youngest of 6. My oldest brother, he passed away in 2010. And
sorry for your loss.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. He was born 1975, so the age gap is crazy. My mom is like in her 70s now, so growing up, I think it's different now, because like there's a lot of freedom, there's a lot of technology, there's a lot of information out there now, where you can't even put your hands on your kids if you know what I mean. But growing up, we was getting beat every day, So it was a great experience. Both of my parents were entrepreneurs, so that was kind of like an early cheat code, seeing how 2 different people interact in the business with their different customer segments and how their leadership style was, so majority of my younger life was really spent in that entrepreneurship, traveling with my parents, doing business kind of phase, where now that I'm older, it's just like, I've been doing this for so long, going into different states and doing business in different states is normal to me because I've been doing it, for a long time. My mother traveling, doing business. So I feel like a lot of that stuff has led me to the point where I'm at right now. Definitely.
And before I hand it off to Steph, you got a chance to talk offline, and I think the people who usually use Dream Shakerz, or even first time listeners, need to listen to this. Before the whole entrepreneurial path, right? You were trying to figure things out. Like, you played college basketball, you been around the block, you did engineering for quite some time, then you went off to Stony Brook, also attended Boom. Like how was that trajectory in terms of like finding who Al-Ameen truly is, like, or what you really wanted to do? Talk about that path, because it was also interesting as well.
Yeah, man. I think, like you said, like when I was in high school, I'll be honest, like when I was in high school, bro, I had like a 68 GPA, like it wasn't until like my senior year where I had Black teachers that were males that I seen that were, had some level of success being teachers, went to college. Before, it wasn't really a notion because my older brothers necessarily didn't go to college. They might have gotten associates or either dropped out of college or didn't go at all. So seeing them telling me like, hey man, you got to get your life together and go to college, so at the time I went to BMCC just to play basketball, and just do the college thing. And I was like, you know what, like at the time I was working in the airport. I'm like, okay, this makes sense. I'm going to go to school. I like being around planes. I'm going to go to school for aeronautical engineering. So I went to Vaughn College after I did a year at BMCC, played for Vaughn. And I got into the program. I'm like, man, like this differential equation mathematics and this Cal 3 stuff. I'm like, this is not really for me. I'm not really trying to sit behind a desk like this and I thought it'd be more hands-on, but it wasn't, you know. So I ended up dropping out of college, and at the time I was working at Delta, so I just took like 2 years to travel. And then I got into a really bad car accident. You know, I got hit by a bus. It kind of messed up, you know, the discs in my spine. And then I said, you know what, I'm gonna jump back into school. So I jumped back into school. My grades were so terrible, I had to go back to BMCC, get my associates, you know, then go to Stony Brook where I got my bachelor's. And you know, during that time, I feel like there's not a lot of in my personal experience, there wasn't a lot of really Black males that really say like, yo, this is the formula of how you get to the next level. You know, like there wasn't enough of that in the ecosystem where I grew up at, where it's just like, yo, listen, I went to college, I graduated high school, went to college, played ball, or, you know, I got a big job on Wall Street and all this other stuff. So I feel like a lot of Black men, like we sometimes are floating, trying to figure it out, you know, because it's not that, hey, my dad plays golf with the mayor, you know what I mean? Or like the governor was just at my house yesterday. You know, there's no track record to really outline like this is how you make it, you know. So it wasn't until later on in life where I was like, yo, this is not what it is. So I need to find out what it is. And I really took that time to really put myself on that path and that trajectory on really figuring out who I need to be and who I want to be moving forward.
So that process of, you know, identifying who it was that you were going to ultimately evolve into, I think is actually a really great transition point, because it pairs fairly well with how you ultimately decided that Payvmnt, right, was going to be the right company to put your all behind, right? So what was that process, right? How did you go through the ideation phase of thinking through concepts and exploring ideas before ultimately settling, or not settling, but ultimately choosing to pursue Payvmnt?
I think it started a long time ago where even before I even thought I would start my own company, it was just that like I would work in certain organizations and places and I feel like, hey, we can do it this way and it'll be better, you know? So I always had that knack for like process improvement, process engineering, you know, and then, you know, going to the juggernaut Amazon, it's like, they always want to constantly iterate and get better and better, you know? So you going into that space with the type of mindset that I had, and thank God, like me coming in, I had a really good leader as my first leader at Amazon that amplified that ability to look at things differently, you know, see things that other people don't see, the process improvement, the areas of where, you know, you can still be a people leader, but also still focus on improving the process by advocating for your people and have your people, you know, in the process with you and making the process better for everybody. So, you know, during my time there at Amazon, you know, I learned a lot, man. And it was just because of the interactions that I have and how I would approach things. You know, if I wanted to find an answer, like Amazon got people there that are rocket scientists, you know, so if you want to find the answer to something, you can find it. It's just ability of how deep are you willing to dig to find that answer, you know, and I would dig really, really deep to find the answers to my question. And, you know, after a while, I started to realize like, you know, we're kind of, we're kind of off top, like off pace when it came to operations. You know, when I got back into New York City and I was running Amazon / Whole Foods, I just noticed that there was a significant gap on the realities of New York City and, you know, what the expectation was from the rest of the country. You know, average managers had 180 employees under them. Us in New York City, I had 598, you know, and then this is 600 New Yorkers, you know, and we didn't have like the Amazon Flex drivers. We had like third-party logistics companies coming in to do deliveries. So the expectation was just different. And then I told the senior team, like, hey, like New York is not like the rest of the country, you know, it's not going to go how you plan. The distances are different and a lot of that other stuff. And the time they realized it, we were already 6 months into the operation, and it was kind of frustrating for me. And then I started to really focus on finding opportunities to improve last mile delivery for everybody. And, you know, then I left Amazon because my lawyer was like, hey, they're not going to give you permission to do this due to IP and my contract. So I ended up leaving Amazon. And then I chilled out for a while. I was kind of just helping other companies do their thing, like on the consulting level. And then, you know, I went to Ojai, which is a micro warehousing platform. And then I stayed there for like 7, 8 months. I learned a lot about startups. And it was just the expectation on how you treat people and what the leadership is expecting that didn't really jive well with me. So I ended up kind of like just stepping back, even though it was a great opportunity, both Amazon and Ojai, I said, okay, I think it's now time for me to start my own venture, And ironically, before I started Payvmnt, in the very, very early stages, a good friend of my mother's, like my aunt, she was like, hey man, like back in college, you had an idea to do campus food delivery, you know what I mean? Which I think was so powerful, but it was too advanced for Stony Brook at the time. So she was like, hey, like Payvmnt is your campus food delivery now, but for the entire country as what you're building. And I was just like, wow, like the steps and the mindset was already there to start a delivery company, you know what I mean? Since I was in college. And now, having the backing and experience of Amazon, it's like, okay, now's the time to do this.
Just something interesting, right? In terms of like, how deep are you willing to dig for that answer? So how deep were you willing to dig for Payvmnt, right? And its model and how it works. Like, could you explain the model behind it? What are some of the perks business owners receive when they join the platform? And is it a larger aim to provide small regional players the ability to compete with large national retailers?
Yeah, man. So the first part of your question, like how deep are we willing to dig? Since we started Payvmnt, I think we probably iterated 2 times already, right? So the initial idea of Payvmnt was to pretty much say, all right, you guys live in the Bronx, but you work in Manhattan. Somebody orders something from a Nike store by your office in Manhattan from the Bronx, you can take it to that night. You could take that order on your way home to your neighbor. So it's pretty much democratizing same day delivery for people that were just commuting in and around cities. Now that, COVID-19 happened, we said, okay, we can't do that because nobody's going to work. However, we do have the experience of being able to scale warehouses, create like supply chain systems. So we create our own end-to-end same day delivery marketplace where you go on our website, buy what you want. Then we have all the product stored in our warehouse. And then our deliveries are our vehicles are doing the deliveries. So we pretty much vertically integrated ourselves during COVID to build this one-stop shop for a lot of the essential products in New York City. And then, as COVID started to slow down and we started to come out of the pandemic a little bit, I started to realize that, anybody can do what we're doing here. There's no real secret sauce, as they say. So, I was talking with Keenan. I said, hey, Keenan, like what I think should happen is we should now focus on last mile delivery because last mile delivery is going to be huge. So we kind of pivoted away from that whole third-party logistics, helping you with your warehousing, inventory management, just to focus on the last mile piece. So now what we do is we partner with regional carriers that aggregate packages from like 500 different retail businesses to one location. And then they'll hire last mile providers like Payvmnt to now go out and do these last mile deliveries for those e-commerce brands that they aggregate to their facilities. What makes us a little different is we take it a step further, not only by doing those deliveries across the nation for all these regional carriers, small businesses, big businesses, we also are now building our own data models in terms of optimizing last mile delivery, right? Like we have delivery data from 50 to 60 or more different big retailers across the nation. We're now taking that data and building our own last mile delivery software, which we're then going to white label and give to the market after we perfect it over the next 2 years with the deliveries and the contracts that we have. So the goal is pretty much scale the business to get as many delivery contracts as we can possibly get, to then feed that into our proprietary system that will sell to the market. And our call to action is, hey, we know delivery really, really well because we've done hundreds of thousands of them ourselves. Like we're in the trenches with you ourselves doing these deliveries. So we know the software works. We know this is what you need. We know this is for you because we're not software engineers as well. Like we're also, a delivery business. We're a last mile delivery company like you. So we know the pain points. We know the addresses are messed up. We know that there's gate codes. We know that the point of entry is not where the GPS sends you. There's so many other data points and stuff like that that's not built into last mile technology that we're pushing ourselves to build by having our delivery model and then giving that to the market on a software as a service level.
So essentially, you're proving the concept internally before you provide it to the market.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And we're able to say like, hey, our ARR and our MRR, like just doing last mile delivery with the software that exists on the market, let's say $1 million, right? And then we're saying now, hey, if we use our proprietary software that optimizes this, it's now $2 million or like $1.8 million. We're able to show the enterprise value in the software because we're validating it every single day across so many different states. And I kind of like got to update our LinkedIn now that I think about it, because it's like we're strictly focused on like that piece of the last mile delivery, as a service, and then pushing that towards the software. Yeah, you got it. You hit it right on the head. Yeah.
Perfect. Now, one thing that you were mentioning within that response and that you've been mentioning throughout this interview is this we, right? The we. So what we're trying to figure out is, you're a solo founder, but we understand that there's a team there, right? So who are the individuals that make up the rest of the team? And what resources did you leverage to initially bring these individuals on and help you achieve this vision?
Yeah, man, that's a great question, man, because I feel that, the ethos of like what we're building here at Payvmnt is heavily predicated on like that teamwork, right? Like we want to live or die behind the team and the people that help this engine go, and I preach that all the time on, public forums and wherever I'm really speaking at, is just because without a team, you really can't get a lot of things done. Like I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about how Jeff Bezos is like a celebrity, but like they don't, like the girl that was talking, she was mentioning like the supporting cast that was behind Jeff Bezos.
And real quick, Al, if you could mention what are the pain points as a solo founder, because we know being a solo founder isn't always easy, and the extra hand could help. So just explain that as well.
Yeah. So, okay, I got you. So like the team, like I was saying, like the supporting cast of the team, well, it's supposed to amplify the CEO to look even better to the public. It's then the CEO's job to say like, hey, you guys are amazing. I'm still going to carry the vision, but like the vision is not possible without you guys. So the CEO is supposed to also be advocating to the public, like, yo, my team is rock stars. Like your team is supposed to be smarter than you when it comes to a lot of the things operating in the startup space. And, as a startup, as a solo founder, I believe that if you had somebody to confide in, that is understanding the struggle with you, and going through the hoops and the fire with you, it's cool. But at the same time, sometimes when you're a solo founder, making decisions becomes hard and it kind of slows you down a little bit. So it's like a catch-22, but like you have help, but you're faster to execute decisions. You know what I mean? Like you can hire a supporting cast that's really strong enough to be a solo founder for you. To go back, how we got people brought in early on was, I think people knew the integrity of who I was and my personal brand and said like, hey, if you're building this, I want to be a part of this. And that's something I developed over the years working at Amazon. And, I believe in like relationships a lot, so I try to foster great relationships for a long period of time. If I can't work with you for a long period of time, I don't want to work with you for a short period of time. That's what I really, really live by. And that has helped me get people like, hey, like when we first started, I had transactions in cash. I had transactions in like 3 different bank accounts. My friend is a bookkeeper. He's like, hey, you can pay me, but I'll do it just so I can work with you into the future because I know where you're going and our paths align. So I'll do it for free right now and I'll win with you on the back end later. So that it's just been the people know my character, and I always look to do right by people. It's kind of like a selfless act. And I feel like that from Amazon till now has helped me significantly, even get new contracts with really, really big companies, meet people in partnerships. It's just because I'm not going to do you dirty because I don't want you to do me dirty. If you do me dirty, I still won't do you dirty because 2 wrongs don't make it right. I want to be able to say I did the right thing by everybody, even though in between that, there'll be a lot of mistakes. So the team now, we're heavily focused on like building out the team. It's like becoming too much for me to just be the only one working on it full time. Just to be 100% like honest with you, like I got a friend that came on like as an HRBP advisor just so we can hire drivers across the country. Another friend that's going to help with the finances, and so there's a lot of advisors slash consultants we're bringing on the equity side, and then once we finish our raise, I'll start to bring on more salary roles where, okay, you work with us full time, here's equity. In a perfect world, or what I envision is everybody that's on the company's books on a W-2 model should have equity into what we're building here. Even if I have to dilute myself more to give the team more equity, I'm fine, because it's like, I don't want you necessarily working for me. I want you working with me. And I feel like if you're working with me, you should have a stake in what we're building here, especially if we're a last mile delivery company and you're a delivery driver. The insights that we need are heavily predicated on what you feed us. So if you own a piece of what we're building, you're helping us build. That's the model that we're looking to, like, we're really looking to build here.
Hearing you preach team, and it's all great, right? And I think it's imperative once you're creating something monumental like Payvmnt, right? But recently you've been out and about, been traveling extensively, DC, ATL, Dallas, Nashville. Talk to us about that process of expansion, and how do you also make sure that things get done at the Payvmnt headquarters in New York simultaneously while you're traveling for business?
Yeah, man. So I think, how we get things done, when we had the warehouse in New York City, being that it was only me full-time on the op, and then I would have friends come in and help here and there, we had to kind of close the e-commerce site for like 2-3 months, which we took a significant hit in the revenue, but it also made the clarity on we should be focused on last mile, because that's what you've been focused on solely now. And this is what's generating a good amount of the revenue for the business. And it's easier to do and easier to set up versus having micro warehousing in different facilities. It's easier for us to expand on the last mile delivery side and then the software side than on that warehouse side. So, I'm thinking about moving the company entirely out of New York City to begin with right now, because when you start looking at it on like a cost perspective in terms of like insurance, liabilities and stuff like that, it becomes very, very expensive, where we can be headquarters in a different state that's friendlier for the cost, and then just have satellite locations outside of New York City, so I think in the next couple of months, we're going to make a transition to completely remove ourselves from New York City as a headquarters and just be more probably based out of either Nashville or Atlanta right now, man, because New York is it's crazy. It's crazy.
Now, earlier on, you mentioned that the role that drivers play in this last mile journey is incredibly critical, right? Like that insight, that data, that real world experience they have is incredibly useful, right? So the Payvmnt site mentions that patrons can tip drivers directly. To my knowledge, this hasn't been something that's been possible with other delivery services. Why do you think it's important for people to interact with delivery personnel?
I think because, I think right now it's kind of different because of like COVID-19, where people want contactless delivery. But before that, I think there should be a level of communication between the customer and the driver, because both of those people in the supply chain have valuable insights. Hey, the elevator doesn't work. Hey, they changed the code. So now the driver knows, we know, and now we can loop that all back into optimization on an optimization level, right? Like, hey, my mailbox is actually this one over here and not this one there, while the driver's spending 10 or 5 minutes trying to figure it out. So having an open line of communication, I think is imperative, even beyond the tip part. There should be a level of, hey, does your building have any weird objections that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis? Like, and being in the field and have done so many different deliveries, it's like if the customer told us this, it would have made our job significantly easier, but there's no path to that level of communication right now, where there should be. And I think somehow in the future we'll build that out. But for right now, it's going to, like, we can't really control the customer's feedback. However, we can push for the driver feedback, and that'll get us to step 1, step 2, and step 3. And then from there, probably get into the customer side of it, definitely.
Now, Payvmnt seemingly specializes in a fairly limited set of products, right? Around personal care, beverages, home essentials, and baby products. Is there any desire to expand out of these offerings? And why did the company decide to focus on this product set first?
Yeah, so, when we first started, again, it was what products the concept was, what products do people need right now during the pandemic, right? Like, how do we get what people want, that people are going to pay, like they're going to pay not really a premium, but pay a delivery fee to get it to them right now. So it was water, paper towels, a Lysol, all that other stuff. So we didn't need to have a huge abundance of SKUs. We just needed to have the right SKUs. And it was just playing around for a time being to find the right SKUs that people are going to really, really take. And as we move forward, I was saying, like, we're not even going to be in that e-commerce space anymore. We're going to be focused strictly on, okay, last mile, right? Like, George owns a t-shirt business that wants to do last mile. All their packages are at location A, and they're all in the zip code of 10013. So we'll go pick up, and then we'll just do all the deliveries in that zip code. That's the model that we're going to be moving forward with when it comes to working with businesses. We still want to work with these small and medium-sized businesses, but the model is just changing where we're going to be working with you on a delivery standpoint. If you want like consultation on how to run the back end e-commerce, that's a different conversation. But for us, it's going to be strictly focused on the last mile piece into the future for sure.
Perfect. And one other thing, right? And then I'll let Steph have at it. From the early days of Payvmnt, it was bootstrapped, but at the same time, it was also, revenue generating. Recently, you transitioned into raising capital. What was that process, or what is that process like currently? And are you like heavily considering the wave of the crowdfunding platform, so to speak?
Yeah. So the crowdfunding platforms, we've spoken to Republic 2 times in 2 different instances. Republic is like one of the biggest crowdfunding platforms. I think what stopped us from going with Republic was more so the ancillary fees that come with it. I think there's other ways to raise that money without having to pay those ancillary fees of Republic, but that could change giving our round. And raising money, like, people really say, or used to say to me, raising capital is a full-time job. And I never understood it until I really got into it. And I was saying, like, you really need to book calls for like 4 to 6 hours a day, where it's just nonstop talking to VCs, pitching VCs, iterating, getting told no, yes, no, yes. So that in itself is a full-time job. And that kind of ties back into what you're saying about having a co-founder. If you have a co-founder, one of the founders can raise and the other co-founder can just be focused on the op and running the team. Being a solo founder, you have to do all of that and still run the business. So for us, it's like, we're generating revenue, we're scaling the business, we want to move faster, so let's raise VC. But do I take the time to raise VC, or do I slow down the growth that we already have now and the contracts are already going on? So it's like, okay, I need to be able to do both, but I'm also traveling a lot, so it's like, how do I manage between 2 full-time jobs, scaling the operation and raising VC, which becomes very, very tricky for a solo founder. It's possible, but with a minimal amount of sleep, I think, just to be honest with you.
And now, another point we wanted to mention relates to technology, right? And advancements in technology. So there are a number of services that have experimented at the fringes or done case studies, if you will, of what the impacts of automation might be. So is that something that the company is considering long term, right? Like, would drones be leveraged, or is it you're thinking that there would always be some sizable human component to that last mile of delivery?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to the last mile delivery, I think in certain states and certain places, drones and all that other stuff could work. the robots and stuff like that. Imagine robots in New York City. Like, come on, bro. Like, imagine, like, really imagine robots in New York City. Like, and sometimes I think that people don't understand the complexity of the city. Maybe it will change over time, but I think New York City is not ready for that right now because we can't even have e-scooters in New York City. So now we're talking about robots. There's certain programs that exist in other parts of the country that that are not allowed in New York City just because of the liability, the risk, and so on and so forth, especially with like, the Revel got canceled in New York one time. I seen like a YouTube video, dudes having a relay race with Revels in like Harlem or the Bronx or something like that. No, it's no shade. But
It was also because like too many people were getting injured during that time span. But yeah,
exactly, because New York is just a different type of city, So I think for us, we'll always have a level of the human aspect into it. And then in terms of like optimization, we can improve our technology from an AI ML perspective. And then also, okay, we're using gas vehicles now, electric vehicles are in, and they're a commodity for the last mile delivery market. It'll then, affect our cost, and it may probably make it cheaper overall since we're not paying for fuel anymore, which is definitely another optimization. So all of those futuristic technology things, the EV, the AI, and the ML can definitely put us in a great space. And I think the company just has to be susceptible to that, where we're already looking at EV vehicles, right? Like, what EV company is going to come out first with like the best Sprinter van for deliveries? That's what we're already looking at. And then the ML part and the AR part is like, okay, in the next couple of months or next couple of weeks, we need to hire a DevOps person, somebody that knows dev and knows what type of systems and platforms to build this foundation on for our proprietary software into the future. So I think tech is not going anywhere. I think it's just going to increase a lot of the outdated business models, and a lot of them are going to be tech driven, or like the post office. I wouldn't be surprised if a private company comes and puts a heavy tech platform into the post office with the post office infrastructure. I wouldn't be surprised at that. So a lot of these old school business models, I think, are going to get optimized by technology in the near future.
Clearly, you're a New York native, but what made you not start off operations elsewhere, like Atlanta, where there's a growing Black tech hub, or Austin, or the Bay Area, where it might be easier to raise capital, where the New York tech scene is a big mystery? What made you really start off in New York?
I think because one, I already moved back to New York, and I knew I could have my home base being a New Yorker. I could get customers easily by just starting, a simple e-commerce business. It would be really easy to scale it really, really quickly. And then again, the initial idea of Payvmnt was people that were commuting, traveling different places, deliver stuff from stores to their neighbors. I feel like New York was one of the best cities to test that model because there's so many people taking public transportation any given day. Being that our models are changing now, I'm second guessing, like, okay, I can move out of New York City. There's really no attachment for me in New York City. I can get, an ops manager up there who can run the business where I don't necessarily need to be in New York City. I can be in one of the states that, is more economically friendly for a corporation versus New York City. New York City to me is not like startup friendly unless you have like buku money. It's like the insurances on like last mile delivery in New York City are crazy. Sometimes the insurance companies won't even write you a policy in New York City just because of the liability. You can't even, and that's again, like, you can't do certain things in New York City because it's just crazy liability out there, and it's just like, if we don't necessarily need to be here, we can scale all these up and coming cities and then come back to New York City later when we've already validated it and can afford to absorb that cost.
What do you believe is your greatest responsibility to your company and society as a founder?
I think, the greatest responsibility to my company is and the people that work with us is that level of like development, right? Like that relationship and giving you the access. Like, I'm a very like execution driven person. Like, I like to execute things really, really quickly because it's just like that operational spunk that I had when I was at Amazon, where everything moves so fast. So now stepping out of Amazon, it's like people are not used to that level of tenacity that Amazon operators had, and I just generally had before that. So it's okay, I want to push my team to operate like that, because once this is all said and done and we go our separate ways, you'll have that experience of working with Payvmnt, and you'll be a very high efficient executor where you'll go to another organization and you'll be a rock star, right? So the goal is for you to be a part of Payvmnt right now, to help us build what we're doing, and then develop your career, develop your skills, so you become a rock star. Once Payvmnt is all said and done and we have an exit, you're now an industry rock star. I helped build Payvmnt, you know what I mean? We had some of the best execution and how we ran the business, is what I'm really doing. Is I want to develop those people that work with us to the next level as they help us get to the next level. And I think my contributions to society, man, is the same thing, right? Like, there's a lot of, people like us, like Black kids like us, or younger than us, that are not exposed to technology, right? Like, how many people that live in the hood or not good neighborhoods that are exposed to product design, product engineering, UX, UI, product management, agile, all this other stuff. Like, the future of the world is STEM focused, right? Like, who is really saying, like, this is what you should be focusing on? Like, I know you want to be a basketball player. The two biggest thing is rapper, basketball player. There's like no in between, right? Like, there's no
and gangster.
Right. There's no in between of successful. Like, there's crazy successful entrepreneurs that are Black that nobody knows about, that nobody talks about. And it really baffles me. Like, yo, this dude from Calendly, his company is worth billions of dollars and nobody even knows him. Like, people
Shouts out to Tope.
know, huh?
I said shouts out to Tope.
Right. Like, nobody knows him and he's super successful, right? Like, so I think the narrative should be like, you can do things beyond basketball, gangster, rapper, where you can be a successful product engineer and have a product design business. You know what I mean? You can be a successful, lawyer, doctor. I got friends that are doctors and I got friends that are lawyers, and they're Black men. I think that, the goal for me and what I'm trying to do is push that narrative further for our people, where it's like, we need to be focused on like economic impact as well as society impact, as helping one another as a whole, is what I'm really big on, man. Is, like, I ask my friends all the time, I was like, yo, besides your immediate family, when was the first time you seen a Black guy that was successful that wasn't a rapper or an athlete? And people, it takes, like, I see people just think about it, it tells me that this is a problem, right? Like, we're not exposed to these people from an early age, where it's like, yo, this dude started a company that's worth $600 million right now. I can do that too. You know what I mean? Because he's not exposed to it. We're exposed to rappers and athletes and gangsters. So we say, we can do those things. Let somebody in the hood, like, come back to the hood and start up like a tech incubator. I bet you more kids will be like, yo, I can be a tech CEO, guaranteed, because there's a proven road to success in front of your face now.
So building off of that, and the idea of paying it forward, giving it back to the next generation, here at Dream Shakerz, we always want to provide our audience the ability to take insights from these interviews and kind of leverage that in their own lives and take action against that advice, that insight. So what would be 3 pieces of advice that you would give to your younger self?
Man, 3 pieces of advice I'll give to my younger self. 1, I would say, be more patient with things. I think it took me a lot of years to develop a level of patience and a level of, just being stoic in certain situations, so I would definitely say be patient. Next thing I would say would have a high level of like integrity and doing right by other people, right? Like growing up, I was a knucklehead, you know what I mean? Like, I was what you call like a juvenile delinquent, right? Like, I got kicked out of school. I was bad. I got in trouble with the law, all this other stuff. And, if I lived on the premise of doing right by other people, it would be a little different now, because I see the effects of me doing right by other people and fostering good relationships is it's significantly transcended like me to a different level in terms of being able to do certain things and execute on certain things. So I would definitely say, that's another one. And I would just say sustained pain of failure, man. You know, I was just telling my nephew this. Shout out to my nephew, man. He's out in Tennessee right now, holding it down, like grinding. My brother's middle son, my brother that passed away's middle son, he now works with me at Payvmnt, just helping us build the op. And I'm super proud of that, you know, and I tell him all the time, like, things happen in the operation. Like, you have to sustain that pain of failure. Pretty much means like things are going to happen. Like, I don't care if things happen. I'm more focused on how do we react and iterate when these failures come about? What do we learn from them? How do we optimize so it doesn't happen again? What gem can we pull out from that failure? You know, so, you know, my younger self, I used to get frustrated when things like that happen, but it's part of the game, you know. Like, it's statistically impossible for everything to go right. So when things go wrong, I'm now surprised why people get so flustered, because it's like we anticipate things always to be right, you know, and I believe that, you know, things will go wrong. How do you react to those things going wrong? You know, and I think those are really, really key. And if you can do those three things, you have a shot at being an entrepreneur, because you fail a lot. You know, you'll fail 50 times and be successful one time. You know, you'll take 50 L's or 10 steps back and take 2 forward. So I think you just have to have that ability to stomach that stuff every single day where you don't lose your mind.
Well, this was amazing. Truly appreciate you, King, for spending some time with us.
Absolutely.
Dropping the gems and the jewels. It means a lot, from learning about your background to seeing how you started Payvmnt to where it is now, and to not giving up, right? Because they say, you know, 90 to 99% of startups fail, and the fact that you've still been able to, again, like you said, have that patience. Again, like you said, stomach the amount of L's, because in this game you'll take more L's than you will W's. But it's really about honing in and just still persevering through the journey. So we appreciate you, and we hope to have you on future episodes to talk about your journey, because this is definitely helpful and
Yeah, absolutely.
inspirational.
Appreciate you guys, man. I appreciate you guys for having me. Thank you so much, man.